Hey y'all, what's up? JamiThatsMe here. Welcome back to the channel. Listen, I want to talk to y'all real quick about Amanda Seales. Last week, she got a chance to have a sit-down interview with Club Shay Shay over there on Shannon Sharp, and it was a lot of different reactions that came from her interview. Some people continued to support Amanda, whereas some people drew the line and they said, this is why I cannot take her. And then you had people kind of like me, where it's like, we like her, we want to support Amanda, but she does make it very hard to kind of defend her at times, okay? And that's what was going on last week. Now, people were really in an uproar because they felt as though she self-diagnosed herself with autism, when the question that Shannon actually asked her was whether she was clinically diagnosed, and she didn't necessarily answer that question, okay? So that became a huge conversation, and then, she came back and she pretty much said some things about Shannon, kind of, making it seem like he was trying to interrogate her and stuff, and I just could not fully agree with some of the statements of what Miss Amanda was making at the time. I still want to support her. I don't want to come down on her so hard like a lot of people are, but I will be honest, some things did not necessarily connect, and I do understand why some people may feel as though she may often take the role of kind of being somewhat of a victim in the situation, or as if everything is happening to her as though she does not contribute. I do understand that completely, but then I also feel as though at times Amanda is like misunderstood at times, okay? But that's just me. Now, recently on the Amanda Seales show, she was asked about, the autism comment and just different things. And I want to actually get into a snippet so you guys can hear exactly what it is that Amanda had to say about this. And then you guys can continue the conversation down below in the comment section. But let's go ahead and hear Amanda out to see what she had to say.
You've already responded, I should say, about the discovery of your autism. But what do you want people to either know about autism, or the fact that you recently discovered that you have autism? There's a lot of talk about whether or not the diagnosis was clinical, or what would you like to say about that?
First, I want to say it is so wild to see people pick and choose when they want to believe doctors and when they don't. Like, I just think that that's one thing that's wild. Two, I think that it's a lot of people that do not know anything about autism. I've seen people say things like, well, I can't say that I got diagnosed with cancer if a doctor didn't diagnose me for cancer. And it's like, well, ma'am, cancer is something that you test for with blood and with actual biological things. Autism is a neurological disorder. It is a different set of testing. And the testing that is done is incredibly expensive and often is not even able to be had by adults. The waiting lists are often for years. And especially for Black women, the only studies for autism at length have really been for young white boys.
Oh, wow.
I talked about this in the interview, and they cut it out of the interview. So the autism, so the majority of pathology around autism is done on young white boys, and so even girl children don't get properly diagnosed. And many parents have come in my DM saying, thank you so much for talking about this, because we have gone through so much struggles to get a diagnosis. And for the most part, the clinical diagnosis is a wide-ranging meaning. So clinical doesn't have to simply mean by a physician. It can mean by a psychologist. It can mean by a psychiatrist. It can mean by someone who is an autism expert that has a master's degree. And it results in them observing you and you filling out bubble tests. Those same bubble tests are available online because of all of the disparities that are faced in the medical field for people to get tested. And as an adult, when you realize that you fall on the spectrum, you are now responsible for how you are going to care for yourself. Now, in some cases, if you are high functioning, you may not need the resources that a diagnosis from a medical practitioner that is able to get insurance will get. But if you are high functioning, this can change the way that you understand your life, the way you understand your brain, the way you understand how you interact with the world in such incredible, magnanimous ways. It is such a revelation. And that is what led me to this. So many Black women saw what was happening to me with Essence, et cetera, and said to me, I feel like you might be on the spectrum because these are all of the complaints that I've been getting all my life.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, I've been getting them too. But as we have seen the language around this change over the years, we really have to look at it as enlightenment. And when I see people say things like, oh, you're just saying you're autistic because that is a reflection of them. Okay. I mean, that is such a nonsensical way of existing that I can't even fathom that. So that is something that maybe you would do. And so you think I would do it, but that is just not how I live my life. Furthermore, autism is not something that people are like running around, throwing around for clout. Like I've never,
that's wild.
Like I've never heard of that. But for me, as somebody who has been, who has always just felt alienated my whole life and always felt like there were things about me that I could not understand, I found a community of people who do understand. And so, for anyone who has something to say, that you can do what you want to do with your time on this precious earth. But what I'm going to do with my time is really connect with that community in a way that I'm only now able to do because I did the due diligence of self-diagnosis over the course of months and the support of my mother, the support of my psychiatrist, and the support of the autism community.
All right.
But let me just say this.
Okay.
So then people are like, yeah, but you lied about it on the show. And I didn't lie about it on the show. What happened was that he was pushing me in a corner that he never should have been pushing me in the first place. So let's start with that. It is so wildly inappropriate to demand that you prove to somebody about a diagnosis of a medical issue. It is unbelievably irresponsible for an interviewer to do that. I would never have somebody on this show say that they are autistic or that they have cancer or that they have ADHD or that they, I don't know, have endometriosis and then ask them, are you sure? I mean, just because you have cramps don't mean you got endometriosis. Like that's just so, it really is very insensitive. But I would also say that a lot of times when you're in these interviews, it's just so intense. And I felt I felt like my back was against the wall. And I felt like this man was pushing me for information, not for the sake of understanding, but for the sake of gotcha. That's what it felt like because he had already set that up. And so I tried to evade the question. I'm not good at evading. We all see that. I'm a direct gal.
All right. So you guys just pretty much heard everything that Amanda Seales had to say regarding autism. And, the whole interview with Shannon Sharpe. Okay. I feel like there's a few things I want to say. The first thing that is coming to mind for me is that I don't think that Shannon Sharpe was trying to back you into a corner with that particular subject matter, in my opinion. I did not like how he handled her when it came to like the racism comments and stuff. That definitely bothered me. And I feel like that's when he was trying to back her into a corner to consider the possibility that what happened to you was not racism or whatever the case is. I did not like that. But when it came down to the whole autism situation, for me, I think he was just, generally asking you, like, have you been clinically diagnosed? Like, just a general question. I don't think that it was bad to inquire about that and ask that in an interview, because most of the time when you do hear about autism, a person has been clinically diagnosed. Okay. People aren't just going around labeling themselves as autistic without record to back that. So I definitely understand why he did that. But I also, and this is where I get exactly what Amanda is saying as well, right? Because if I tell you that this is what's happening to me, don't be trying to dive deeper. Like if I came to you and I'm like, oh yeah, I have, or I don't want to put that on myself, but if she would have said, she had a certain disease or whatever, a lot of people are not going to ask like, oh wow, how, like, did you get, go through the testing? Did the doctor confirm that for you or whatever? Because of the seriousness of it, they're going to just be like, oh, wow. So you do have, they're just going to automatically, assume that. But, maybe because of his lack of knowledge about autism or whatever the case was, he just was asking a general question. I didn't think he was trying to back her into a corner of any sort. But I do understand where Amanda is coming from, where when a person tells you what's going on, just draw the line at that. For example, a pregnant woman. If a pregnant woman tells a person like, hey, I have postpartum depression, not many people are going to say, oh, were you clinically diagnosed? Did the doctor tell you that, right? Because there are symptoms that are online to where if you know that you're experiencing those symptoms, then chances are, and you've just had a child, chances are you are experiencing a postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety, right? A lot of the questions that are listed online are the same questions that will be asked of you in the doctor's office. So, and that they would use pretty much the same formula to identify whether or not one is indeed, with, postpartum PPD or PPA, right? I'm sorry. Postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety. So I do understand where Amanda was definitely coming from with that. It's just like it gets a little difficult when you try to twist certain things, right? And that's what makes it kind of difficult, in my opinion, to always defend. I can't be a person that always just goes up from Amanda with every single thing, definitely understand what she's trying to say, but then when you try to flip it and make it seem like, oh, this person was interrogating me, and it's like, no, they weren't. I don't think they were sitting there interrogating you the entire interview. We all saw it. You saw it. You participated in it. And so much so got so comfortable to a point that you seek to hug from a person when you're not even a person that gives out hugs like that. So at some point, he made you feel comfortable in the interview. And I could tell that based on how much water you were over there pouring up. You started getting real relaxed. And that was really because I think that Shannon kind of eased back and let her talk. And when I say ease back, not ease back from being aggressive, but not asking as many questions, you know what I'm saying, that would require her to see things in a different light, basically. So yes, I can't fully, agree with her on that, but I think she do got a point with the autism thing just a bit. But people that are out there living with autism and people that work with individuals with autism on a regular, you guys can speak better to this subject in all honesty than me, so definitely educate us in the comment section. But if autism is kind of based on a lot of the symptoms that you see online, I can see why one would kind of like self-diagnose themselves as a person with postpartum depression or anything like that would kind of do the same thing. Like, oh, wow, I have a lot of these symptoms. I just had a child. I think this is what's going on with me. Like, yeah, I have X, Y, Z. So I don't think it's uncommon for people to self-diagnose themselves, but I also don't think that it would have been hard for Amanda to just be upfront and just say, I have yet to be clinically diagnosed, as many people in certain situations. But, based on a lot of the symptoms, I do believe that, I am on the spectrum. But I feel like she may have mentioned that, in the interview. And I don't think that Shannon was asking a question that a lot of other people would not have asked, right? So that's just my only thing with Amanda. As I said earlier, like sometimes I do think that she may twist things with, to show herself as the victim in the situation. And I'm using the term victim for lack of better word, but I'll say this, she may twist things just a little bit, so the other person in the situation can seem more like the aggressor or the problematic one versus herself at times. But yeah, for the most part, I agree with her. But some stuff I just have to call out because it's not necessarily making sense. You asked for a hug from this man. I definitely recall the time that you felt defeated in the interview. And I really felt for you because I was like, okay, Shannon, like you're doing too damn much, okay? As far as the racism situation. But when you talked about autism, I felt like you got into autism and things and you spoke on that before you even got into the racism aspect of stuff, right? So I don't think that he was being pushy at that time. And I could be wrong on the timing of it, but I still didn't get the same vibe that she got. But I think that, she has a point, but then also things are a bit muddy. All right. So you guys leave your thoughts and comments down below. I feel like y'all might still be just as confused now as y'all were before. All right. But I guess we'll get through it, or either we'll just move on at some point. Okay. But leave your thoughts and comments down below on how you felt about everything Amanda Seales had to say. And speaking on, autism and things, and how she felt Shannon Sharpe handled that interview. And can I also add that sometimes it's situations like this where when you didn't get ultimately what you wanted out of an interview and people didn't praise you or people find fault in what you said, and then you start to take aim or a shot at the interviewer, that's where I feel like relationships can get damaged. Right? Because it's not Shannon's fault that the audience this woman did a 3-hour interview. She said a lot, but for some reason, people were more drawn to what she said about the autism comments, right? So I don't think that's his fault that the audience drew to that and held you accountable to that. So I don't think it's fair to kind of like come down on him about that part. Now, what I think would be fair is to call his out about using that racism stuff and trying to make it seem like your experience wasn't valid because of what the hell he experienced in life. And that was definitely a problem for me. I did not like that at all. But y'all let me know y'all thoughts and if y'all see it how I see it. Hopefully I ain't leave y'all more confused. But girl, if you are still confused, it ain't me. I promise it ain't me, girl. That sat up here and got you even more confused, okay? So y'all let me know y'all thoughts about all that I just said. I am Jami, that's me, honey. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share my videos. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at JamiThatsMe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.